Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's the day before Road to the Title. Season 3 is being released. We've got a lot to talk about. The summer is heating up. The content is heating up. And if you're tuning along to Slap News, you're going to go along for the ride because we are going to lead the coverage every single week. We've got a ton of things planned. We are excited to be breaking it down for you guys, being the voice, being the pulse of slap fighting. I know you guys have a ton of things going on, going out camping, going on family vacations, enjoying the sun, hitting the beach. We see all you strikers as well, training incredibly hard for the upcoming event, Power Slap 9, whenever that takes place. Ding. I'm on you all the time in the DMs. Keep on pushing the lever. Are you ready for what's to come for the coverage that we're going to have for Road to the Title Season 3?
Yeah, brother. Listen, I'm super excited to be able to bring this content to the community. Obviously, our goal here is to strive to be better every time, deliver the greatest content we can. And I think one of the things that we're really excited about is being able to break down this lightweight division as it's sort of made. We've talked about Robert Trujillo, the dominance that he's had. Now it looks like we're going to find a challenger that's going to emerge out of this season, and I couldn't be more excited. In addition to that, obviously some familiar faces, guys like Darren Godfrey, Jay Rivera. This season is going to blow everybody's minds, and I can't wait to cover it.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it, man. There's still some guys you left out. Alan Klingbeil in that light heavyweight division. James Stonier in the heavyweight division. From everything that we have seen, there is no super heavies in this show. But like you said, the light heavy is going to be coming in and creating somewhat a division. I'm sure these guys are going to get ranked coming out of it. And I think it's foreseeable to see, because I know they've talked about it in the past, potentially making a belt for that lightweight division. And I think it'll actually be great because I do believe, and I'm sure you've heard the podcast that Paige Van Zandt had, in regards to TJ Dillashaw. I believe it was the Rampage Jackson podcast that he was on and talking about potentially the crossover into Power Slap because he had some, issues with one of his shoulders that doesn't really allow him to fight in MMA anymore. But coming over to Power Slap, he'd be able to use the opposite arm, not have to worry about that shoulder. And so we could be seeing that because, I mean, I don't know, you know better than I do, but where did TJ fight? 145?
Bantamweight.
Which is 35. So, opening up some of those weight classes can bring over, I think, more crossover. We're seemingly seeing some of the lighter weight classes take more of an interest in Power Slap actually than some of the big boys. So having that crossover could be incredibly exciting. Let's talk about it right off the hop. We'll take 30 seconds. We're going to break it down because we are coming at you all the way through this entire Road to the Title Season 3. We are starting every single week off with this show, Smack Talk. We're on episode number 21 already. We appreciate you guys tuning in every single week, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, X, or on Rumble. We want to keep on bringing that to you guys week after week. It is going to be the mainstay. It's going to be here. We're going to be doing the preview of the episode in the week to come on the Tuesday show, locked in 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern every single week. And then on the Wednesday, you've got the episode that airs 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. in the East. Immediately following that, you can come over, Slap News on YouTube, and we're going to be doing the after show. The final slap will be here. We'll be breaking down the matchups. We'll be getting the fighters involved. We'll be interacting with you guys in the chat. So if you don't get enough from the episode, you want to come over, you want to talk about it, the ups and the downs, the trials, the tribulations, the fights, all the extracurricular stuff, the fights inside of the house. We're going to be breaking it down for you guys. It's going to be your number one spot. Come and hang with us immediately after. We pretty well are going to go as soon as the episode is finished. I would say we're probably going to be looking around 6:30, 6:35 every single Wednesday. We're going to bring you a second live show on those Wednesdays. On the Thursday and the Friday, we're going to have the winner interviews, which will be released here on YouTube as well. So make sure you tune into that to get the inside scoop, get to know more behind the actual fighters themselves as they progress through the actual ranks. So you're going to be seeing, like I said, 2 live shows, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're going to be seeing Thursday, Friday. You're going to be seeing interviews from us. And as you know, we keep on bringing you the recap videos, the social posts, and everything that takes place in the world of Power Slap. I mean, the week is young. We're on Tuesday, but we already have some information that, has come out. And I mean, right off the top, let's talk about it, Ding. Texas gets sanctioned. We kind of knew this was coming. Dana White has talked about it. Frank has talked about it. Texas being a potential opportunity. We know There's a couple big markets in Texas. There's a lot of population there. We've got Houston, we've got Dallas, and we've got Austin, which is an emerging city. I mean, they even have F1 there. And we know that they're primed for that younger demographic getting in world-class events. Now Power Slap has an opportunity to head there. I mean, you're an American. Talk to us about Texas, what that state means, and, when do we think we could see a Texas event?
Yeah, I mean, Texas is highly regarded in the political scene as kind of the more, I guess, like kind of the test state, if you will. A lot of trial and stuff like that happens in Texas. Obviously, we've heard Nebraska Power Slap talk about potentially going to Texas first, targeting that market. So I think it's incredible to see, that they actually were able to get this done. And now it looks like this is what they'll have their eyes on for their first live event abroad that's not in Nevada. We got a couple strikers from Texas, from what I understand. I know Brian Ellis. We were talking to him during Power Slap 8 fight week. That's a guy that you could call and tap and have on a card like this to get that hometown crowd.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. I'm just trying to pull up real quick to see if there is any dates. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they go to Houston with the UFC. Do they not?
Almost they have in the past. Yep.
Okay. So Houston might be a destination. I mean, obviously home of Brian Ellis, as you talked about, heavyweight contender there. Could we see them? I think realistically at this point, just kind of looking at the schedule, how things are kind of lining up, we know that Abu Dhabi has been spoken by Dana saying they're going there before the end of the year. We know traditionally that the UFC usually has a banger card or a banger event in December in Las Vegas. Could they kind of work something with Power Slap with that potentially? I think that is an opportunity. Just looking at the number of cards and that they want to put on every single year, I think there's at least 2 more events going to take place this year. Probably not in the cards. I mean, especially if the UFC isn't going to, which doesn't look to be at this particular point, going to Texas in 2024. Could be pegged for sometime in 2025. But it's still exciting to see that the regulatory bodies are approving it, that are allowed to move the sport forward. And then we can start planning some of these other destination places outside of Las Vegas. And I think Texas is one of those big markets in the South that will literally eat this sport up when it goes there. So I think it brings it to a whole new level. This roadshow when it actually gets out there. But, changing gears a little bit, let's talk about, and in a lot of ways, I feel like Stevie Ray Payne was kind of a fan favorite. I mean, in some ways, we didn't get to see too much of him, and I'm going to quote him, not me, so don't jump on me for saying it. But, Stevie quoted, "All that I did was come and get knocked out." But, overall, the guy was a great sport. The fighters in Power Slap love him. We see he's a family man. He's out there doing a lot of stuff with his family, fights in a lot of different things. Remember the first event against Nate Bernard. He fought in like MMA 2 weeks later after getting KO'd by Nate, in an event back in Hawaii. We know this guy's a fighter. Here from Slap News, and we do this for the guys. We wish you all the very best. We appreciate you for your contribution to what you did to Power Slap. You're obviously always part of that family, and we hope you stay around and keep in touch. I mean, Stevie Ray Payne, the rankings came out. He's still there, but we get official word from the fighter himself, which he confirmed in the comments section of IG, that he has officially been released.
Yeah, man, I appreciate all the guys past and present that we've seen. Obviously, we've talked about releases in the past. Not our favorite subject, obviously, but we do want to make sure that obviously the community, the fan base, the other strikers are aware who's on the roster, who's not on the roster, so they can start calling their shots, figuring out what their fantasy matchups will be, who they want to see face who next. And, I echo Corey's sentiment. Like I said, we here at Slap News, we support you, my man, Stevie Ray Payne. Great run you had here. Of course, you can characterize it however you want to characterize it, but you got up there, you showed the gall. You were bold and you stood there and you took strikes, which a lot of people, even professional fighters, have said they won't do. So hats off to you, man. Best of luck to you in your future. And, thank you so much for trusting us to be the news outlet to release this information.
Yeah, 100%, my man. 100%. I think Stevie Ray Payne will, I think he'll be around the sport. He seems to be a good guy. But, I think we'll see him hanging around. Hopefully we'll go to Hawaii. We'll see him there in the crowd and everything else. So going to change gears. I'll let you take this one, my man. Kamsa, what do you want to say?
Oh, my man, Kamsa. So I will say that I think it's I was surprised by him saying that he was sought out to potentially fight again. And then I was even more surprised by his response to that and kind of what has transpired since then. Obviously, with him saying some pretty bold stuff on his Instagram story. So I mean, I'm shocked to say the least. I'd love to see him back, but it doesn't sound like they're doing too well in the negotiation department with Mr. Kamsa. Above and beyond that, I think obviously from the comments, there's mixed reviews. A lot of people don't respect him because they say that he quote unquote quit. The one fight that we did see, he was successful in, and I thought that he had a good moment in time. I thought that his presence in Power Slap was definitive and it was enjoyable. But like I said, it doesn't look like they're going to come to terms on money anytime soon. So I hope to see him back personally, but I was shocked at the way this all unfolded.
Yeah. You know what? I think it's interesting. I think obviously his war of words that he kind of had in his story, I won't say might. They definitely crossed the line. There was a, directive, directly at Frank in there, which probably isn't smart to do, say you want to slap your employer. I'm sure it's been done in the UFC. I'm sure there's a lot of fighters that wanted to slap Dana White over their time, but probably not an ill-advised recommendation for anybody that wants to get a match to threaten the big boss. But I don't know. You know what? It could be an interesting scenario because talking to Danny Van Heerden, talking to some of the other strikers in South Africa, some of the guys in RFX in Poland and stuff like that, like Kamsa is seemingly the second biggest name. You talk to these guys, they all know Dumpling. They think Dumpling is a legend. But the second guy that they hold in high regard is Kamsa. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he's just trying to negotiate a better position. Obviously, going public is an interesting tactic if you're going to do that. But, maybe it's not done and over yet because they are going to Saudi Arabia. We do know that he is a massive superstar internationally that we may not feel here in North America. And so his name does have some clout. We've heard some numbers thrown out there, and I don't even like repeating them because, we directly asked Kamsa what his ask was, and he didn't reply back to us. So I don't even want to throw out there what those numbers were. Some of the other strikers were speculating, publicly and in the DMs of what they think that number is. But it's really irrelevant at this point. We hope, for the growth of the sport, really, with just knowing that he is that international superstar, that they can come to some sort of agreement and we see him back up there. So it'd be great to see that and see more of these international guys. I mean, we've got guys like Danny Van Heerden, we've got Merlis, we've got Sean Kilmartin, Darren Godfrey. We've got guys that have been in and around the scene who, we're projecting that will be there in Abu Dhabi when that time comes, before the end of the year. So I think it's incredibly exciting. But let's kind of keep on moving along, my man, because I think it's super, super interesting, everything that's going on with the show. Do you want to talk about the show first, or do you want to talk about the rankings? What do you think, Ding?
Let's end the show talking about the show.
All right. Let's end the show talking about the show. So let's go right off the hop, my man. We're going to start out the welterweight division. Wasn't a ton of movement here. We do know Emmanuel Muniz coming in as number one. Jewel Scott dropped down from 1 to number 2, but pretty much everything else stayed status quo in these rankings. I know initially when it came out, I asked you, from all consensus, Emmanuel dropping to 1, was that the right decision? Even though Jewel Scott coming off a victory, we don't know how that happened, but Jewel has publicly said in his story that he won his last match. Is 1 and 2, Ding, placed correctly?
Yeah, man, I think former champion who just lost his belt, especially in a fight that close, generally speaking, that's kind of how all this goes. The champion who loses goes to number 1 automatically. And then from there, as things evolve, fights happen, then they can change things. So I think this is absolutely correct. Emmanuel, the former champion, should be number 1.
Gotcha. Where do you think kind of goes next? I mean, with seeing this ranking, do you think Anthony Blackburn defends his title against anybody you see, or does it kind of set up potentially an Emmanuel Muniz, Jewel Scott, and then even potentially a Chris Thomas, Andrew Provost? Could you kind of see that? To me, it kind of that 1, 2, 3, 4 actually kind of align quite well. Chris Thomas and Andrew Provost, to me, I think would be a phenomenal match. We haven't seen Provost for a little while. I'd like to see KO Chris come back and potentially bounce back. We'll see if Chris, 3 losses could spell the end for him. but can he bounce back against a guy like Andrew Provost, who has proven to be a fairly strong competitor? Granted, he hasn't fought some of the elite talent in the division right now, but he showed up. He's been able to amass some victories. And, from all accounts, he's looked good in doing so. He just hasn't been as active as we'd like to. What do you think? Do we kind of see Anthony Blackburn taking a bit of a step back here, holding on to that belt while the rest of the division kind of figures itself out?
I mean, he can. I also think you have a case for the rematch immediately. I also think, and Yodu said it best. Joe and Chris Thomas has been one that's been brewing for a while. It was previously scheduled, never happened. Would be a good way for Chris to get back up there, having lost now to the former champion and the current champion. So nothing that, be ashamed of there. But I think, like you said, 1, 2, 3, 4 is perfect to be able to line those guys up, get Andrew Provost back in the mix, figure out where he's at, how everything's going. One point I do want to make this very interesting. We did a poll. I'm sure most of you saw it on our Instagram story to determine if people agreed, disagreed, or were undecided on the way the rankings shaked out. And for this one in particular, we had 73% say they agreed, 19% say they disagreed, and 8% said they were undecided. So an emphatic response from the community saying that they agree with these rankings. They think that they're appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we really only had one movement. Jules Scott dropping down, Emmanuel Muniz jumping up, and obviously Anthony Blackburn going to the championship. So not a lot of movement going on there, but I think it just validates it, obviously, that the fans of Slap News that pay attention know what's up as well, and we seem to be aligned on this one in particular. All right, man, let's keep on moving on. We are here in the middleweight division. John Davis, the champion, obviously idol, is still up there. If you haven't seen Origins on John Davis, I definitely recommend after the show, head over there, our channel, check it out. Phenomenal story. You want to be able to know more about John Davis. This is one of the most in-depth looks you will ever have into the champion. So let's talk about the middleweight division. The biggest mover in the division, Isaiah Quiones, after taking care of business and, stopping Wesley Drain, which has never been done before, moves up 4 positions. Brandon Bordeaux also moves up 2 positions to number 3 in the ranking, dropping down Wesley Drain to number 4 by 2 spots. AJ Hintz at number 5 drops 2 spots, and Garrett Grimes dropping 2 spots. Dang, looking at it, they've held the top the same, John Davis, Aziel Rodriguez. But Isaiah Quiones, the biggest mover, coming in at number 3. What does that say? Are the brass of Power Slap showing their hand?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he beat number 2 in the world. And I think at one point I want to make is that I think in some cases you start to see when a mistake is made in the rankings, being that they're not updated so often or so quickly, sometimes you sort of start to see this where maybe 2 people are mismatched and they're in their own place. Maybe one should be on top of the other, and they're close together. And I think that they use these opportunities as they update the rankings to sort of correct those wrongs. So a guy like AJ Hinch debuted at number 3 in the middleweight division with a DQ win. You know how I feel about DQ wins, and based on what Power Slap has done in the past, we've seen how they feel about DQ wins. They gave Danny Van Heerden a title shot off of a DQ loss. So for AJ to debut at number 3 with a win like that was surprising to me from the beginning. Brandon Bordeaux, a guy being that I think he was at number 6, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that he was a little too low back then. I think now you give Isaiah the 2nd spot because he beat number 2. You put Brandon there, that's fair. Wesley should still be ahead of AJ because of all he's accomplished. So I think they righted it wrong here, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And the numbers on this, I've got 66% agree, 29% disagree, and just 5% are undecided. So I think this one's a little bit closer as far as that agree-disagree number, but still overwhelmingly agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knew that Isaiah was gonna ratchet it up. I mean, he's done it twice now in the division, proving that he's able to take out a guy like Wesley Drain, who has a great chin, in doing so. I think Brandon Bordeaux jumping ahead of Wesley Drain is an interesting one. Obviously, we haven't seen that fight. We don't know how it goes. We don't know how it ends. We believe that Bordeaux is somebody that's marketable. We believe that he has the potential to be a star. We believe that he's, he looks the part and he says all the right things. So him jumping up, I think, is an interesting sign, seeing Bordeaux's stock rising, coming in. I mean, I wouldn't argue if Wesley Drain was ranked number 3 and Brandon was ranked number 4, just based off the track record in the division and what Wesley has been able to do. But seeing the poll kind of change a little bit more is showing you that some people have some other thoughts going into this one in particular. I also think it's actually a little bit more interesting. The bottom of this division with Eddie and I'll call him the Chief, but the Chief, Brandon Rhodes, and then Merlis. Kind of interesting, these guys here, because I feel like there's a ton of potential on the bottom of this here. Eddie, we still want to see again. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with Brandon, and then we kind of seen him stop. The Chief, obviously, seems to have the skill set, however, seems to be running into some foul troubles along the way. Brandon Rhodes as well, we've heard a lot about. We know he's going to be on the show, so really interesting to see how he's going to play into this mold. And then Merlis, just ran into some real tough luck on road to the title season 2. I think we want to see him back as well. So there could be some prospects in that bottom half, starting with Eddie down to Merlis, that could very well move up in the ranks here, very, very shortly. So,
yeah, an interesting point you pointed out, man, that I just want to highlight is when you talk about the Chief, I think it's interesting. His only fight that we've seen so far, obviously we know he's on the show, but his only fight that we've actually seen so far, he lost because of a DQ. Mm-hmm. So for him to even debut in the rankings is kind of interesting. I'm not saying he shouldn't. It's just interesting because the only fight that he has is now a loss, and he's ahead of some other guys, who like a guy like Merlis, who I thought, had a really competitive fight. Unfortunately, he was on the wrong end of it, but I thought it was, I had my eye on the guy. We talked about him last week or the week before, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's an interesting one too, where you have a guy like that who he has the potential, but we haven't really seen much from him. I'm wondering if that's some foreshadowing of the show or maybe it's not. I don't know. But again, it was just interesting to see that when you pointed it out. I thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, Merlis is 1-1. So Merlis has a victory. So, maybe there's something there. And like I said, I think we'd like to see him back. I mean, he's, he fought some tough competitors, and that middleweight division, I think top to bottom, is turning into a real, competitive division. It's one where, you could see some of the guys in the top losing to guys in the bottom half of the division as well. Like, I think there's a lot of that young prospect talent in the bottom 7 through 10 that could challenge some of these guys, 3 through 5. Not calling anyone in particular, but I think there's some uncertainty. There's a lot of skill there, and the opportunity for that to be able to change could be good. Did I miss my man, Jonathan from Texas? I always thought he was Puerto Rican, so I didn't make the connection, the Texas connection. But
yeah, he said you're ready for Texas with those boots you got behind you.
Oh yeah. We know whose boots those are, right? Those are the middleweight champ John Davis's boots. So I actually don't know what size they are. I've never actually
sniff them weekly, don't you? You do.
What's that?
You sniff them weekly. We know.
Oh yeah,
it's fine. It's fine, dude. You do. We know.
That fresh Ohio manure, my man, smells great. Let's go, my man. Light heavyweight thing. Let's break it down.
Well, I think this is fair. Again, a guy like Russell didn't change at all. You got Vern obviously at number 1 after what he did to Austin Turpin. So Turpin goes down. The rest of that division, I think, is a lot of questions. I'm actually surprised at number 10. I think everybody is, given kind of what we saw on social media over the last week or so. But I think you have a lot of fun matchups in that bottom 5 from 5 to 10. I think you have a lot of people you can pair up together that will be really fun. I think you do champion versus 1 and 2 versus 3, and then everybody else you could pair them up however you want. But I think from the champion to number 3 in the world, you got the perfect 2 matches right there to figure out who's really the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this division keeps on putting out banger matches. We've always talked about kind of that big top 4 in the division: Wolverine, Russell Rivera, Vernon Cathy, Austin Turpin. These guys, however you entwine them, I think it makes for phenomenal matchups. They seemingly, like you said, seems to be, lining up perfectly. Vernon Cathy, 3-fight win streak, kind of having that second win in his career. I think from all accounts, and even speaking with Wolverine, he'd love to be able to get Vern in this next matchup. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Austin and Russell, I mean, the other 2 guys that fill out that, that top 4, Russell, heavy-handedness, wants to take your head off every single time you're up there. Austin Turpin, obviously the personality that he is, the skill set that he brings to that light heavyweight division, would be a phenomenal match as well. But I mean, I wouldn't argue the other way. If you had Russell versus Vern, I mean, that would be another phenomenal matchup. In that rank, the big 4, always entertaining, brings that mix of athleticism with power. And, you definitely don't want to blink anytime those light heavyweights are up there. So Russell Rivera moving to 265 to fight Terp. What's that about? Is he kind of saying that Terp won't make light heavy again?
It's a weight miss joke. Yep.
Okay.
That's all the chat is right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't put it up. I wouldn't put it past it. You know what? I mean, I don't know. I'm a bit sick and twisted in the head. I'd actually love to see Ryan Phillips and Austin Terp at heavyweight. I just think where those guys came from. Do you remember back in the day, the meatball versus the milkman? Like, I know it's been squashed, but I still think that would be a phenomenal matchup. The storylines you could tell, the personalities, I think that would be a main card match on pretty well any card. So if they do have heavyweight in Austin's future, I think, him and Ryan Phillips could be a banger for sure. So
we'll talk about this one in a second. My brother in the chat.
Yeah. All right, let's move on, man. Heavyweights.
Real quick, on that last note, the numbers on that were 75% agreed, 18% disagreed, 7% undecided. So again, an emphatic agree from our community.
Absolutely. All right, my man. Heavyweight, Damien DeBell holding it down the top. Ryan Phillips in the number 1 spot. Of this, we've got Nate Bernard moving up 1, Dorian Perez moving up 1, Brian Ellis moving up 1, Cooper Housley moving up 2, and then we've got Logan Greenhall holding still. Overall, I guess the biggest thing here is the exit of Dwayne Crespo from those rankings. Move these guys up the ladder. Obviously, the Cooper Housley Logan Greenhall match, which actually dropped. I'm not sure it dropped on Rumble, but I seen it on Facebook. It's up there now. You can see the draw that took place. And we haven't really talked too much about this match yet. There's been a lot going on trying to get ready for Road to the Title Season 3. I guess we glanced over a little bit, but it being a draw, the first fight of that night at Power Slap number 8, obviously not ideal. I'm sure you're playing it back. You heard Dan Haley, you heard Michael Bisping. What was going through the mind of Cooper Housley at that point going into the final round? I guess I should say that this is a disclaimer. If you haven't watched the fight, maybe just mute me for the next 60 seconds if you want to go back and watch it. But, what was going through Cooper Housley's mind in that particular point? And I mean, where's the coaching at that point? Because literally, like you said, he just had to give him a love tap and he would have came out victorious. But getting that penalty in the end proved to be different. And obviously the majority draw took place with 2 judges, 28-28, and then 1 judge with 29-27, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure where that came about, but what's your thoughts overall?
Incredible fight. I think both guys' stock went up. Really, I think the focus should be, the placement of the strikes. Obviously, Cooper had that moment at the very end where he made a mistake. But aside from that, I thought they were incredible strikes, especially given their experience at this point. I thought it was impressive. I was impressed by both guys.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, one thing I thought was very interesting was that Cooper Housley's demeanor in that one. I mean, it looked like he was having a ton of fun. He was up there. He was confident. He was enjoying taking the strike. Logan Greenhall, I think, is interesting. He has much more of a calm, cool, collected demeanor. I don't want to say more, maybe just timid's the word. When he's about to receive that strike, we did see one flinching call. A couple of the other strikes, I think, was very close. That kind of could be debatable if it's a flinch or a rollout. But just the way Cooper Housley was inviting the actual slaps to come in, the way that he was smiling and grinning, and the way that he seemed to be really into it, seemed like he was having fun up there. And, we see the rankings, obviously, he's the biggest mover, moving up 2 positions, jumping Logan in those ranks. And we'll see. Cooper Housley now holding down that top 5 position. I think we'll see him again real soon. Just unfortunately didn't come out the way that we wanted to see, a KO or a knockout, but it definitely was one of those grinding out battles. Is Cooper Housley and Logan Greenhall, are they the Eddie Brehmer and Brandon Bordeaux of the middleweight division now here in the heavyweights?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, incredible performance from both guys. They took them, they dished them. Obviously, a couple mistakes made that I think they can tighten up and have a better performance if they go at it again. But ultimately, again, I was thoroughly impressed with their technique, the way they delivered their strikes, the way they absorbed their strikes. Those look like some hard shots, man. We know Logan's put people out before. We know Cooper's put people out before. I honestly think that I'm excited to see both guys fight anybody moving forward because of their performance on that night.
100%. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, but I think Jonathan Carrera is in the comments. Is he on season 3? Has he publicly posted it? He
No,
hasn't?
I have not seen that.
Okay. I don't know why. I thought for some reason that he was, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm just trying to pull this on the fly. But John, if you were there, if you can let us know, did they make you a nice little banner to put up on coming soon for Road to the Title season 3? Let us know in those comments, my man, because we see you are also in the ranks. You're holding down a spot there, down at number 10. I mean, I guess assumingly moving up to number 9 now with Stevie Ray Payne being out of the mix. So we'll see. Let me know if you're there, but let's move on.
One thing that was interesting about those rankings, or I'm sorry, when we watched that fight, he just confirmed in chat, no, he is not on the show. But when we were watching that fight, if you listen to the beginning, Michael Bisping and Dan Hellie talk about the minor heel lift being tweaked a little bit to be even more, allowing a little bit more liberty on that, but still not allowing the pivot. So I thought that was an interesting point. I don't know. Again, I've always been a proponent of this vague rule. It's very unspecific when it says a minor heel lift. What's a minor heel lift? And I think that causes a lot of disruption and argument's sake when people do lift, but you still cannot pivot, but you can lift your heel a little more from what they said on the broadcast. I'm not saying that. You can look at that on the broadcast. It's there.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you leave, I think that's part of the thing is that they want it to be arbitrary. They want it to be up to the discretion of the judges. It gives them that variance. Obviously, sometimes, especially for the strikers, they want it to be very black and white. It brings in a different level of intrigue. Like, I don't know, maybe that's something that they want to invite. They want to give that discretion up to the judges. But as you said, it's leading to, some conversation starters, where we are also starting to see now, I think it really started, I mean, I don't know how back, but where I started noticing it was kind of like the KO Chris Thomas versus Emmanuel Muniz with the front or the opposite foot kind of leading. And we're seeing that weight transition. We're starting to see that more and more with more strikers where we're seeing, the opposite foot rise on the wind back. They haven't talked about that whatsoever, but we're seeing that the heel raise down and we're seeing the transition this way of the heels. Paige Van Zandt, there's a good example of that, of her doing that. We've seen it now, with a number of different strikers utilizing that weight transfer. And you know what, as of right now, they seem to still be keeping within the rule set. There hasn't been too much talk of that lead foot rising. So we'll see what happens, in the coming events, if they continue to tweak those rules. I think at this point, with where they're at, they're still fine tuning it. They're still combing it in, trying to come down to the final rule set. And I think we're starting to see a lot more kind of meld out over time back to the equilibrium of, first strikes aren't ending in KOs nearly as much as they were in the beginning. We're starting to get much more leveling of the playing field. I feel like the rule with the heel lift is starting to level out now, where they're calling a number of DQs versus what's being allowed. And I think we're going to see the rule set continue to be tweaked to be much more fair, as closely as possible to kind of having that 50-50 where it's not drastically impacting the outcome of the matches unless it's completely egregious, as you've talked about. So let's keep moving on. The super heavyweight division, we've got some big movers here. We've got a lot to talk about in this one in particular. The Crazy Hawaiian holding it down. Dumpling debuting in that number 1 spot after taking out Camille. And then we see Dane Viernes dropping down 1 spot. We see Danny Van Heerden moving up a spot after losing to the Crazy Hawaiian in that title match at Power Slap number 8. We see Kalani dropping 2 spots, being inactive. We see Makini Manu dropping 2 spots, also not being active. And then we see Dwayne Crespo making his debut in the super heavyweight division at the number 6 ranked spot. And then everybody else in the rankings of Evian Scott, Lorenzo Florian, Unca Micah, and Slap for Cash all dropping 2 spots with the influx of Dumpling and Dwayne. This one here right off the bat, I see you look in your face already. Let's start out with the poll. What did the audience say? Because this one seems to be drumming up the most controversy of them all.
Yeah, only 42% agreed with this one, man. 54% disagreed. Obviously close, but most people don't think this is correct. And I have a sneaky suspicion, that it is very likely, probably Dublin being at number 1 is rubbing people the wrong way. Dwayne being at number 6 is probably rubbing people the wrong way also. He beat number 1, so how does he debut at number 6? I think there's a lot of questions people have, and rightfully so, at the super heavyweight division. I mean, you beat a guy like Camille, who was probably number 9 or something, and you become number 1, or maybe he was, I don't know, 7 or something. I don't even remember what he was, but it was definitely the bottom half of the rankings, and you become number 1. I get how he did it, but that's a tough one to justify.
Yeah, I mean, Dumpling moving up to number 1, as you said. Camille's no longer even on the rankings. I didn't realize it until this particular moment that he is no longer there in the rankings. Should probably follow up with him and see if he's been released or if he's still active on the roster. I mean, because Slap for Cash, who we've seen once, is holding down that number 10 spot. So would be interesting to kind of see if he's still part of Power Slap or not. We should give him his due. We should follow up on that thing. So let's make a mental note to do that. Dumpling coming in at number 1, like you said, quite interesting. Is it surprising? No. I mean, I get it. I mean, it was, a phenomenal entry, KO. They're definitely giving him a lot of credence for what he's done outside of Power Slap, paving his way there. And I mean, you know what? I'll be honest. Let's look at number 2. If you have a problem with him at number 1, let's talk about number 2, Dane Viernes. What do we have for Dane Viernes at this particular point? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he not? What is he?
1 and 2. 1 and 2, I think, because he beat Slap for Cash, lost to Evian.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that changed to a no contest for the failed drug test?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So is he actually 0-1-1? 1 disqualification loss, 1 no contest?
I'm going to say this so that chat can laugh about it. I'm going to check the Power Slap website and hope that it's right on this one.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I feel like Dane in this particular situation doesn't have that. If it is the case that it was called a no contest for a failed drug test over Slap for Cash, I mean, Dumpling having that emphatic victory, I mean, kind of gives credence to it, if you ask me. So I think there is that, I don't know. I'm sure the chat's probably, if they have access to it, talking real time, I think there definitely could be that there. Danny Van Heerden coming off a loss to the Crazy Hawaiian, coming at number 3, Kalani at number 4, and then McKinney Manu at 5. 2 guys that have sat idle at this particular point, dropping down behind that. I don't know. Could you make an argument that Danny could have been up a little bit higher in the ranks? Could you see Danny coming in at 2? Or do you think the loss was that decisive that Dane Viernes still remains above him?
That's tough, man. That's a really tough one. I think you could argue both ways, only because what Dane did to a guy like Slap for Cash, who was this big pompous entrance where it was like, oh, he's gonna come in, and those of us who know like Slap for Cash is not like a legendary slap fighter or anything like that. He kind of did this for a long time, really for content creation, to be honest. So I wasn't surprised by the whole thing. I mean, he was going up against a really tough guy. I kind of expected what happened to happen, but I think, in the same sense, again, Danny Van Heerden, a lot of hype behind him, but we haven't really seen it all play out yet. I mean, he got rid of some guys on the show, but since then he hasn't really been as successful. Obviously, we saw when he went up against the champion what happened. I see what Dwayne said, and I wanted to just put this on stage. So they have him at 2-2.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know who the other person he beat would have been, but maybe I'm tripping.
Yeah, I can't remember at this particular point. We're gonna get to it, guys. You see the chat's going crazy about Dwayne Crespo. If you want, you want me to kind of take this one, my man? You ready? Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I know you're fired up about this one.
Yeah. So this one here, you know what? I think one of the, I'm gonna get behind Dwayne Crespo in this one. You can call me a homer if you want. But I do think Dwayne Crespo has the ability to be ranked higher in this one based off what he did. He took out the number 1 contender in the division, wins, becomes victorious. His record of 6-2 overall in Power Slap, speaks for itself. We know that the heavyweights that have come up to super have taken care of business. I believe it's 4-0 when a heavyweight comes up to super. So maybe there's a bit of sauce mixing in there. But I mean, for a guy like Dwayne Crespo, with what he's done in the sport, definitely deserves more respect than his original placing at number 6. Even with that one victory, over Dane Viernes, who I think is much greater than some of the others in that weight class from what we've seen. Even a guy like Kalani, for example, who I believe is 1-1. His victory came over Cody Vallo, who's not even ranked. So in this particular situation and instance, I believe Dane Viernes is a much stronger competitor, which is showing in the rankings at number 1. Dwayne took care of business there versus a Kalani who took care of Cody Vallo, who's not in the ranking. He was never ranked any higher than, 9th, 10th in the ranking, possibly even at his peak. So how do you have a guy like Kalani still holding down that number 4 spot ahead of, 2 spots ahead of Dwayne? So I think there should be a little bit higher up there in the rankings. I could see him, jumping up quite a bit. I think him and actually just kind of spitballing it, him and Danny Van Heerden at this point would be a phenomenal match, actually. I think that could be a really good match for Danny to come back, and we can really see what, our man Crespo can do against the guy that top caliber that just went up against the Crazy Lion. So could be there. But I think he's ranked probably 2-3 spots too low for me in this particular division. And I know we're going over McKinney Manu, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a case for McKinney and why he may be ranked too low.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've said it in the past. We see how Powerslap feels about DQ wins. However, the guy's undefeated. I personally, when I saw him on the show, I thought the guy was the next thing. He hasn't shown us any reason why we shouldn't believe that. I think it's unfair, to keep Danny ahead of him after Danny lost to the champion. McKinney has a win over Danny. I honestly think, and this is probably not a popular opinion, but I think these two should run it back, really solidify who's better. Because as of right now, the way that the rankings show, it looks like Danny's done more to prove that he's more skilled in Powerslap than McKinney. And I just don't think, when he was paired up with the Crazy Hawaiian, I wanted to give him that respect. I wanted to give him that benefit of the doubt. But now that what's happened at Powerslap 8 has happened, I just don't think that it's fair anymore to continue to say that this guy's, better than McKinney when he doesn't have a win over McKinney. I think they run this back and you really figure out where the ranking should be, just to give some clarity. And again, the fan base disagrees also. 42% of the people agree with this, the way that these rankings are for super heavies. 54% disagree. And I think I'm one of the 54%, particularly for McKinney Manu. I think you counted the guy out once. The way that events unfolded, turns out he was kind of right. Give him his opportunity, rank him up higher in the division, let him get somebody who's maybe a contender to be next in line for the title.
Yeah, but I mean, we talked about it before, and you're the one that brought it up on this show earlier. DQ victory not being rewarded. Could that be playing into this?
I mean, yeah, but how can you reward it? You rewarded a DQ loss, and it didn't pan out the way that you would hope it would if you're going to give that somebody that kind of opportunity. So now you have to go back to the guy who won by DQ and give him a little bit more respect because, like I said, for all intents and purposes, McKinney Manu was right.
So where does McKinney Manu go next? What makes an intriguing fight? Because I don't think at this particular moment you could give him the champion. But what kind of makes sense, do you think?
Well, I would like to see him and Danny again at some point in the future. You could also do McKinney Dwayne. You could do McKinney Kalani. I've always thought McKinney Kalani visually would probably be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody knows why. I think everybody understands why. And, ultimately, I don't know that fight happens. I don't know that Kalani wants to keep doing this. We haven't heard from him in a while, but I think it would be hilarious. But I also think it would be very competitive, and there'd be a lot of questions answered by that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Kalani has done wrong. I mean, every time I reach out to him, hey, man, like, what's going on? You got a call? You heard from anybody? His phone's always open, but he doesn't seem to be getting that call. I'm not sure if he's fallen out of favor with the brass of Powerslap. Not quite sure what has happened at that kind of upper echelon after, losing to the Crazy Hawaiian. But he doesn't seem to really be in the mix, in the fold. I know he's not doing a lot for himself on social media. I know he's not asking for a fight publicly or anything like that. But, he seems just to kind of be sitting there waiting on the outside right now. I don't believe, I haven't seen anything that he's, still playing professionally in or semi-professionally in football. So I'm really not too sure what he's up to there on the island and if he's still practicing. You remember, back in the Slap News garage sale days, we showed that he was selling his gym and everything else. So not quite too sure where he's sitting, but he's still holding down a top 4 spot. So obviously they still have some, respect for him, and hopefully we'll see him back here real soon. So, but Danny and McKinney, I could get behind that. I think I could, at this point. I'd be curious to see if McKinney would be open to running that back.
Where's Slapdog at? I'm sure he would be. Where's Slapdog at in the rankings? Slapdog is 8. Yeah, Danny versus Slapdog just doesn't make sense. I know Danny called them out. I know they've had words. It just doesn't make sense. It's too big of a jump. There's a lot of guys that, like, if he fought everybody in between him and Slapdog, I'd take it. Since he hasn't, it doesn't make sense. I would even love to see Kalani Danny. Oh, my God. Come on, man. Come on. Now I'm getting crazy here. Kalani Danny's another one that I would love to see.
I hear you. But I know right from the get-go, you always spoke very highly of Evian Scott. Before we even seen him in Power Slap, you looked at his history, his background, where he was. Where does he kind of fit in this? Like, is he going to fight up in the ranks, or is he going to fight down the ranks?
Let's see. Evian, my man Evian is at number 7. Evian Dwayne, Evian Kalani. Those are the 2 I would see for him.
So you think he's fighting up?
Yeah, makes sense. It makes more sense for him to fight up.
Could you see him against Lorenzo? Fighting down against Lorenzo? I think that'd be a tough match. I think that'd be a real tough match, actually.
I'd like Lorenzo Micah better. I personally don't think we see Slap for Cash. I don't know why he's in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a one-time and done. I don't. After what happened, I don't see any reason why we see him again. Maybe him versus Cody Vallo.
Yeah, he obviously opened up to us and talked about, getting down to that 385 mark. We've done it before. I think it's obviously a challenge whenever you're that size to be able to get down there. We haven't heard from him in a little bit of where he's at, but if that's the case, I still think that's probably an obstacle that has to overcome for them to do it. And I think his contract probably at the time was probably a little rich for Power Slap when they signed him. But I feel with the increase in pay that has taken place since, it's probably equaled out a little bit more. So, maybe there's that opportunity, but I'm not too sure. I don't know. You tell us in the chat. Do you guys want to see Slap for Cash back? Is that a guy you want to see in the super heavyweight division? You guys let us know. Anything in the chat that we've kind of glanced over? I haven't been watching the chat here. I've kind of leaving that dude.
Micah. Everybody's like, Micah's still on the roster?
Yeah.
Yes, Uncle Mike is there, man, and he's in Vegas. He could easily get there for a fight. I don't know why he hasn't gotten one, but that's a tough SOB. He's Samoan. I'd love to see Micah back.
Yeah, last time we seen him, he's a tough. He's a big dude. I'm not sure what it is. He's still in the rankings, so obviously he's still under contract. So who knows? Maybe we'll see him back real soon.
Yeah, everybody in the chat said no, they don't want to see Slap for Cash back. So
okay,
it's not just me. In case he sees this and gets mad at me, it's not just me.
Absolutely. All right, my man. Let's keep on moving on. Does that wrap up the rankings? You feel good about where we're at, whether you agree with it or disagree with it? That is where we are at. That's the world that we live in. The brass of Power Slap has let us know that this is what they think of it. So let's.
Do you think we see lightweight rankings after the show, or do you think it waits until somebody fights Trujillo?
I think we'll see it right after the show. To be honest with you, I think Trujillo will come in at 1, and I think everybody else will kind of follow suit just based off the sheer amount of volume that Trujillo has done. But the reason why I say that is because we did see that with Super as well. When they introduced the Super heavyweight, we seen the rankings came out before the first ever title belt was introduced. So there is a bit of precedent there. I think we'll see it. The way that they're marketing this lightweight division, it makes too much sense. Like the promo to have that as one of the biggest headlines in it, having Robert Trujillo there. I don't see why they don't ride this wave completely. And I think they're seeing it, like I said before, that 155, I think they're seeing that as an opportunity to bring in a lot of these lighter weight guys into the division, really grow it out. And, 155, obviously. And and a way for them to really expand. So I think that's where the focus is. We've seen it kind of season 2 was kind of focused on filling in that super heavyweight. We know there's no super heavies this time around. Focus on light heavy, kind of fill out those edges. And I mean, who knows? Maybe just kind of forward thinking here a little bit. Maybe season 4 we're gonna influx of women, because I mean that would be monstrous. Maybe we get two of the biggest stars, Sheena and Paige, coaching. Get even 50% of those 33 fighters being women, and really fill out the women's side of the card. You don't think so, Ding?
Sheena Jackie, bro.
You think Sheena Jackie?
Don't get away from it.
I'm just saying coaches. That's all. I'm just saying coaches. But you think Sheena Jackie? Yeah.
Sheena Jackie needs to happen. It needs to happen, and it needs to be built up the right way. Mm-hmm. That fight didn't end the way that anybody wanted it to. They've got bad blood. That's the fight that needs to happen.
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want in the meantime, but ultimately that needs to be the fight.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that.
Before we get a new animal in Power Slap, because we already got Paige. And so as you start, and Paige, for those of you who don't know, Paige fought at 115 in the UFC. She walks around at 135. So she fought at that because she didn't want to cut weight. Mm-hmm. So she's not a big 135er. All they got to do is get somebody who's heavy like Sheena, who has to cut, and they're going to have another monster. They got to do it pretty soon. For all everyone's sake, really. I don't want to get away from that fight. That fight needs to happen. It's the most exciting thing that women have seen. How far away do you think we are from a top 15 versus a top 10 in each division?
I think we're far, to be honest with you. I think we're quite a ways. But even talk about that. I mean, we've got Robert Trujillo, Austin Turpin, not the same weight class. Could you grab the star power of Paige and Sheena? 100%, I think could happen. In saying that, I mean, I'm not discounting Jackie. I do believe that Jackie Sheena fight, will be touted as, and marketed as one of those fights that could be electric. I wouldn't even doubt it potentially if Jackie drops down weight class, actually, because we know they've developed out those 2 different divisions. And so we could see that as well. But top 15, I think we're years away, because I mean, look at this particular moment, UFC 700 strikers, they've got a top 15 ranking. Power Slap, in all accounts, I think somewhere probably between 150 to 180 strikers, give or take, under contract. We know they're obviously releasing some guys. So I think a top 10 definitely makes sense. I think you'd have to see the roster at least double before we get a top 15 ranking here. And I mean, really, there's not enough opportunities for guys to fight on cards to really have expanded out more than the top 10 as of right now. Because I mean, we talk about, these guys from, 5, even, 5 through 10 in the rankings, or guys that aren't ranked, to have that opportunity to get onto a live event at this particular time with, 4 to 6 live events a year, just not enough opportunity to get those guys in there. And I think just assigning, an arbitrary number from 11 through 15 doesn't really do anything for you, overall to grow the sport. And I don't think it really holds enough clout at this particular time for it to make sense. But let's change gears, my man. Let's talk about the show. Let's talk about what's coming up here. We know that Power Slap Road to the Title Season 3 debuts tomorrow, July 24th. We've been, hearing about it all the way back to Power Slap number 8. It's going to be there 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. in the East. We get dropped. The first 2 fights are going to come to us in the middleweight tournament that they've developed out. We've got 2 matchups. This is the first time they've ever let us know the matchups before it's happening. So kind of cool to see that they're hyping this up a little bit. They're previewing this a little bit. We've got Anthony DeFrank going up against Gianni
Huerta.
So what do we know of these 2 guys, if anything?
No, not really alive. I've seen them on live, Gianni particularly. They've been real tight-lipped about the season, as they usually are. Mm-hmm. But we know, like Jesse said, Jay Rivera. He's a recognizable face. He was there, in the very beginning at the qualifiers. And I behind the scenes, I've heard some great things about Joshua. I don't know how to say his last name, but I've heard that guy's serious. So let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Jay Rivera, obviously, we've seen him before. We know he's definitely a guy that's in the gym often. We're going to see if he's going to be able to make some noise. But Joshua, you know what? I'll commend him. I've seen him IG live a number of times with the other strikers talking about it. Seems like he's very passionate about the sport. Seems like he's working incredibly hard. I know he's excited for this release. We're going to get the match right off the bat. I think back to the matches that we've seen before. Road to the Title season 1, right off the bat to finish off, we had the One-Eyed Wolf versus Ryan Phillips. Season 2, we had Logan Greenhall. I don't remember who he fought in that particular match, but obviously that was a one-strike knockout to start the night off. For these matchups to be able to be placed in this first episode, you can expect fireworks from it. They're putting, arguably some of their best matches of the entire season on these first episodes in the past. So I would expect this to be much watched TV, both of these matches, and I would expect some phenomenal knockouts to take place in this particular instance. And so we have seen some of the previews. There looks to be a lot more beef in the house this year from what we heard from some of the strikers when we were there in Las Vegas. There's a ton of fights in this, and it's seeming like they're going to let us see these fights that have been brewing time and time again. We broke down some of the stuff that we've seen. It looks like season 1, they gave us a lot of the stuff behind the scenes in the house. Season 2, they took a lot of that away. I kind of feel like it's coming back to the middle. I think we're going to get a bit more of a mix and match of the on stage stuff mixed in with the actual stuff from the house. And I think it's going to be one hell of a great season overall. 33 strikers. Obviously, we know not all of them make the house. Typically, I believe it's around 24 strikers end up making it in. So we're going to see, arguably 11 of these guys or whatever it is, or, 9 guys not make it into the house. And we're going to find out really quickly here in this first episode. They're probably going to show like trial fights per se of the guys that don't make it. So we'll get some other, matchups that happen. Overall thing, what do you think is going to be the biggest thing that you want to see in this particular series?
Like Dana always promises, I want to see the best rise to the top.
Yeah. I mean, the best, as Dana said, rise to the top in this particular format. No matter what happens, the cream rise to the top. This seems to bring the best out of people. They've proven that now, 20 plus episodes with Tough, and now coming into season 3, road to the title. We do know the Brasa Power Slap want this to be a fast track for guys to get a title shot. Season 2 didn't work out the way that they thought. Obviously, Danny Van Heerden got that opportunity. The only guy that has had it since. Brennan Bordeaux at this point is knocking at the door of that. And so we're going to see, can some of these guys come in, win in decisive fashion, get that opportunity at a title? I mean, we've talked about it before. I think there's some divisions shifting. The middleweight division for a long time didn't have a clear-cut contender. Now, seemingly, it seems to kind of switched a bit where the heavyweight is kind of up in air. So we're going to get a heavyweight out of this show that could potentially rise to the top as to who goes up against Damien DeBell. And then obviously the lightweight tournament, Robert Trujillo, getting him a viable contender for who we would hope, even just a match in Power Slap. I mean, let's not even talk a title at this point. Obviously anything we can talk about a title, which we would love to see, but all that's unconfirmed. But even getting Robert Trujillo against somebody that has some hype, hopefully we can get a guy out of this tournament that becomes 2-0 with some decisive knockouts, that we can really build some hype around Robert Trujillo, because I know you've spoke very highly of Robert for a long time. You think he's a superstar in the making. If you put together, a top 5, as we talked about with, our on the last episode, we talked about pound for pound ranking. I think Robert Trujillo is right up there when it comes to it, and really getting him a top level competitor to go up against, I think is really going to be something that I want to see come out of this particular series. But in all honesty, man, I want to see more behind the scenes stuff. I want to see that war room. I want to see Erica. I want to see Frank. I want to see Dana. I want to see Hunter. I want to see what are they talking about behind the scenes? I would love to be able to see more of that. When they get, we get the reaction when they're side stage, but what do they actually talk about afterwards when they go back to that war room after the event, is done? What are they saying? What are they, the guys that win, the guys that lose, more of that? I'd like to see those personalities start to come out more. I'd like to see more of how that interaction happens. How they work collectively. Do they disagree in any situations? Because we don't really see, I know you watch more UFC stuff, but do you ever see Dana disagree with Hunter, or Hunter disagree with, the matchmaker in the UFC? Do we ever get to see that, or is it all just hunky dory all the time? So
you never really hear about that. They just did a documentary recently called Fight Inc. Dana said he hated it and would never do it again. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna close the door on that prospect.
We'll see, man. Do we have some of the strikers from the show in the comments right now?
Oh, absolutely. We got a ton of them. I saw
Awesome,
Hunter,
guys.
Assassin, Raiden, Gianni was in here. Yeah, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Awesome, man. Actually, we got Vince as well. We haven't talked about Vince a little bit. I see him in here. Vince, what's going on, man? I mean, we haven't heard from Vince actually. Is he still here? Shoot us a message if you're still here, Vince. Fellow Canadian that is going to be in the show.
Oh God.
Yeah, we're gonna start that down again.
Fellow hide and seek champion here.
100%. Do you know if he's still here?
Dakota McGregor's here. Who knows who Purple Cow is? Maybe Purple Cow's on the show. Who knows?
Oh, we got Brandon Rhodes is here. There we go. McGregor, Rhodes. Interesting. All right. Purple Cow. I haven't heard that one in a little bit. Oh, he's not here.
Yeah, he's not here. Good. I'm still curious who that is. Yeah, I'll pay you to tell me who you are, bro. DM us.
You want to know that bad?
Don't tell anybody.
You want to know that bad?
Well, yeah, you just got to see the shit he's saying. Then you'd really be wondering why.
What has he been saying? I haven't been following.
It's not okay for our monetization policy.
Oh, it's not? Okay. Too funny, man. I mean, I'm excited. We've seen Power number 8. So a lot of these guys showed up, for the event. Got to see some of them. Looks like some really great people, some guys that have got their head on straight, that want to make this a career. I think this is actually one of the biggest things. I reflect back on, road to the title, number 1, 2, 3, some of the cats that kind of came into the league, the opportunity when they had the tape fights, and you talk to them in the actual, you talk to them in the hallway and stuff like that. And, now guys are coming in wanting to make this a career, where I feel like guys in the early beginning, it was like they came to just, to try it out. It was, I'm going to try it out, see what happens. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it's a paycheck. But now we're seeing guys that are like, no, I'm coming here. I want to be here. I've been training for this, actually wanting to make this a career. And in less than a year, that's the psyche, the mentality has changed a lot. So it's great to see. So, great to see kind of that evolution. I think everything is evolving. I think things are getting ratcheted up across the board. I think we all want to see more matches, more opportunities. So do we even know? Is it 10 weeks? Is it 12 weeks? Do we get confirmation yet? Or are we still kind of hanging the balance?
No, we just start July 24th. Who knows when we finish?
We don't know yet. I'm sure there'll be a lot of clarity. I'm sure we'll know how many episodes next week. I'm sure we'll get kind of a format. I'm assuming there's going to be a bracket for this tournament is probably going to happen. Maybe we'll see kind of a NCAA bracket style, particular event happen, tournament. We're going to see, the final determinations of all the teams. We kind of started to kind of look at some of the graphics that went out, and we tried to put the teams together and some things that make sense for us. So I think we'll get some more clarity of that. Obviously tomorrow we'll see how the guys picked, their particular teams, and we'll get some of those first round matchups. So
I agree with this, Brandon Rhodes. I think this is a great point, and I think this will happen.
What's happening?
He says, I will say, I hope it eventually becomes harder to get into Power Slap, like having to compete in other organizations to make your name first.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think there needs to be a feeder system of some capacity. We've heard them talk about before doing combine style stuff, which we know even happens with BKFC. Like Devin Schwan flew out to, I believe, Tampa, Florida, had to do a tryout, ended up getting a contract from it, and still sat for, 8, I believe it was 6 or 8 months before he actually got a fight. But I mean, seeing these type of tryouts, seeing these type of combines, I think these types of things, will eventually happen. Can they set up a feeder group to it? I think at this point, it's probably a little fresh, because I mean, how do you monetize that in a way that makes a lot of sense? At this particular moment, do you do it like a TV production style with no audience, kind of a feeder system where you're feeding content to whatever platform you're on? Maybe you look at something like that. But obviously, I mean, the cost to put these on are magnificent. Not only the amount of money these guys get paid, their per diems, their flight, their hotel, their travel, it's big money to bring these guys in. And so who else is going to step up to the plate for these feeder type of system? Or, is it Is it going to be ran by Power Slap and or one of their subsidiary companies? Is it somebody else that they end up partnering with? I think we'll see it over time as these rules develop out. We see more jurisdictions open up. And what I think is interesting too, and I don't know the exact wording on this particular, on a lot of these posts, because if you look at the one today, it says today Texas officially approved Power Slap. It doesn't say slap fighting. Is that just an oversight? Or have they approved Power Slap to do slap fighting? Or is it anybody to do slap fighting?
Your guess is as good as mine, brother. I have no idea.
I don't know. I mean, seemingly in California, slap fighting, which they've opened up as well, they said the same thing, Power Slap. But then, from judging from what's been going on, apparently it's not fully legal in California yet. So, and that's based off other organizations having to go to, First Nation reserves to put on events, not being sanctioned by the Athletic Commission in California. So I'm not sure. Like, does the clout and the power and the track history that they've had with UFC, is it giving them the leeway that the company is kind of getting that license versus the entire sport as a whole? I mean, I think there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered. So
maybe they think Power Slap is slap fighting.
Maybe they think it's the same. But the interesting thing is, like, when you looked at when MMA got sanctioned and went state by state, it was Nevada that was training, like even here, like in British Columbia, Canada, like the Herb Dean system was brought up here. Like Herb Dean came up here to be able to actually coach the local judges, the local refs, and everything else that kind of evolved. Like, they took what Nevada built. They were the first pioneers, and Nevada helped all these other jurisdictions get going as well. And so I think you're going to see that same thing. Like, there's no way they go to Texas or they go to California and they don't have the representation of the, Nevada Athletic Commission giving guidance of what they've learned and how the experience and everything that's behind it. So I think you're going to see the familiar faces in terms of the judges. I think you're going to see the doctors. I think you're going to see the refs coming from Nevada. And whenever they do decide to go to the other states, whether it be Texas, whether it be Louisiana, whether it be Florida. I mean, we've heard talk about Florida as well. They opened up Florida. We know that you've got Sheena based out of Miami. You got Austin Turpin, and you got Paige Van Zandt in Jacksonville. So, we talk a lot about these opportunities that exist in other parts of the country, which is seemingly like 2025 is going to be a pretty interesting lineup ahead when this thing gets on the road. And I think coinciding with it, I think it's going to be, something to behold, because I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, Florida will be fun. I'd love to go to Miami and watch people get slapped.
I think that
ideally on the beach.
On the beach.
Whoever gets slapped goes into the water.
Yeah. I guess there might be advantageous of not stepping in the sand.
Yeah, dig their feet into the sand.
Yeah. We got Parks just saying he agrees. He thinks that the slap fighting is Power Slap. I mean, they could just be using those words interchangeably. Obviously it's Power Slap putting it out. They're just saying that they're sanctioned and approved, and maybe that they're just using those two words kind of interchangeably between the two of them. So we don't really know per se, at this particular moment. But I think we're excited. We're coming back following the final slap is going to be taking place approximately 6:30 Pacific, right after the airing of the show. We're going to get into it. We're going to have the guys on. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. We're going to be live on YouTube. We're going to be live on Facebook. We're going to be live on X. And we're going to be live on Rumble. Ding. Last time around the horn, what have I missed? What do we see?
Better be me versus Alan K. Brandon Rose versus Alan Klingbeil in Texas. I like it.
There we go, my man. All right, dude. Appreciate you. As always, we are going to be back tomorrow. You don't have to wait too long to get your fix of Power Slap, because it's coming at you. The final slap tomorrow, 6:30 Pacific time, 9:30 in the East. Stay good. We'll get back at you real soon.